Today I'm going to do something that I haven't done in a while. I'm going to prepare what I call a fan recipe. There's a fan of the website who writes to me occasionally. She's a really good cook. And she's what I would call an organic cook. She can go to the refrigerator and she can inventory it. I got some of this, I got some of that, a little of this, a little of that, and she can figure out what to quickly put together into a delicious meal. And she told me about some chicken breasts that she had stuffed with a mixture of spinach and cheese and meat. It sounded really good. I thought with a few variations I can turn this into a really nice recipe. So that's what I want to do today. I want to make these spinach stuffed chicken breasts. I'm going to start off here by chopping an onion. I don't need this whole onion. This is a big onion. This is over 13 ounces. You need a medium to medium small onion. I'm going to use half this, about 6 ounces or 170 grams. I'll put the rest of that later, away and use it later rather. Get this peeled. And then, as I always do, I have my own way of chopping an onion. I want a fairly fine dice. So I'm going to cut these lines close together to start. Like so, and then I'll cut across. And there's my dice. I've been heating a skillet here on the stove. I'm going to put a few tablespoons of oil in there. Add my onions. And then I want to cook these for maybe 5 to 6 minutes, just until they're translucent and tender. My onions look good there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a couple of cloves of garlic. These are large cloves, so I'm going to add just 2. You can add 4 if you've got small cloves of garlic. And then I'm going to cook this for maybe 1 minute more just to get the garlic cooked. All right, I'm ready to start adding my tomatoes here. I'm going to get my sauce in there first. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of crush these tomatoes with my hands. That's my timer going off to tell me my onions are done. Just going to crush these just so that they're not too big. I want to do one little bit that I do once in a while. It's kind of fun. I've seen these chefs on TV, right? And they hold up a can that looks identical to this. And they tell the audience, you want to use real San Marzano tomatoes because those are the best. And I'm thinking, I have that can in my cupboard. Just read what it says on the bottom of the can. It says here, grown domestically in the USA. This is just a brand name. San Marzano isn't in the USA, it's in Italy. The local grocery store finally started selling the really good, true Cento brand San Marzano tomatoes. And what is the deal with San Marzano? Well, I try to explain it like here in California, there are regions like Napa Valley that is famous for growing really delicious wine grapes. San Marzano just happens to be a region in Italy where the soil and the climate conditions are just right for growing really delicious tomatoes. So if you're going to buy tomatoes, look for the real ones. Try to buy the real ones. Don't be suckered in by advertising. So there's my tomatoes in there now. I'm going to bring this up to a boil, turn the heat down, put a lid on this, and simmer this. For how long, it depends on how you like your sauce. Some people like to cook their sauce for hours. Some like to cook it for minutes because they want more of that fresh tomato flavor. I'm just going to cook it for as long as I need to. When I'm ready to use it for the chicken, that's when I'll use it. I moved my sauce back to a simmer burner. I've got another skillet that I'm heating up with just a few tablespoons of water in it. And this, in case you can't guess, is anchovy. I like anchovy fillet in some of these dishes. Consider this, however, optional. You can see how easily that just breaks up. It kind of disappears into the food, but it adds a little bit of depth to the flavor without announcing itself as, hello, I'm anchovy. Okay, and then now that that's coming up to the boil, I have some spinach here that last night while I was watching the news, I plucked all the stems off. Beautiful. There's a stem that made it into the bag. I'm going to put a cover on that and just cook that until that spinach wilts down. After a minute, maybe I'll turn the spinach over and continue the wilting. So there is my spinach now, all nicely wilted down. Looks beautiful, doesn't it? And the aroma of that anchovy in there is just right. Now I have to let this cool down. I'm going to transfer this to a bowl, let it cool down, and then I'm going to squeeze the excess moisture out of it. My sauce is bubbling away merrily on the back of the stove. I'm ready to squeeze my spinach here. This is a trick that I learned from fans of the website. I don't know everything. There are people out there who know things that I don't know. I used to squeeze my spinach in my hands, and they said, no, use a potato ricer. That's what this is, a potato ricer. And you can squeeze all the excess moisture out of there. I know people who cringe at the idea of taking all that nutrient liquid out of the spinach. However, if you're really fussy about saving that water, throw it in the spaghetti sauce. Okay, there's my squeezed spinach. I need to chop my spinach here now. I failed to mention earlier how much spinach I actually had. That was an 8-ounce package of spinach, which is about 227 grams. Again, with all of the stems removed. And that should be good enough right there. Next I can chop my prosciutto. I have a package here of thinly sliced prosciutto, and I'm going to use just a couple of slices here. Doesn't matter if these tear coming out of the package because they're all going to get chopped up anyways. I want to chop this up fairly fine. Which is a little bit of work because prosciutto can be a little on the tough side. But that's the whole point of chopping it up. I have my prosciutto in there now. I'm going to add some ricotta cheese. This is a 15-ounce, 425-gram package. I'm not going to use this whole container. I'm going to use maybe a quarter to a third of it. At the most, like maybe 4 ounces. That should be enough. And then I have here a good couple of pinches, maybe 2-3 tablespoons of Romano cheese. You can use Parmesan. I happen to have Romano. And then I've got my nutmeg grater here. Because I'm working with spinach, I just can't imagine not working with fresh nutmeg in there. Maybe about 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. I like fresh ground nutmeg, but you can, if you want, use nutmeg from a jar. All right, and I'm ready to stir all this up. You'll notice I haven't added an egg to this. Sometimes when you make a stuffing, you'll add an egg. The reason why is because I'm probably going to have some leftover stuffing here. I can stir that into the spaghetti sauce, the pasta sauce, to give it a little bit more flavor. I've done that. I'm going to try to use up all of this stuffing because I have some very large chicken breasts. All right, that looks good. What I want to do now is just add a pinch of salt. And I want to grind some black pepper in there. And then get out my red handled tasting spoon and see how this tastes. But that right there is looking delicious. All right, red handled tasting spoon. Once the spoon goes into my mouth, it does not go into the mix. That's why it's got a red handle. That is wonderful. A little light on the salt, but that's okay. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I have two very large chicken breasts here. I put a piece of parchment down. It'll be easier to clean up. The chicken also won't stick to it as much. And I even dusted the bottom of the chicken with a little bit of flour so that it would be less likely to stick. My chicken breasts are big. This one is over a pound. It's almost 454 grams. The other one is about 13 ounces. All right, and what I want to do is cut into the chicken breast, not all the way through, just enough to make a pocket in there, like so, like that. And then start scooping my stuffing in there. Much in there as I can. If it doesn't all fit, that's fine. Okay, and then I'm going to tie those off. So I'm going to tie these in maybe 3 or 4 different places. I just don't want the stuffing to come out too much while it's cooking. Like so. So there is my chicken breast now tied. I have my other one to do. And these can go into the sauce. Returning now to my sauce. I'm going to rest my chicken breasts in there. I used up most of the stuffing. I had very little left over. And these chicken breasts are so large. I would say each one of these would feed 2 people. I'm going to make pasta to go with this, so I would say this meal would feed 4 to 6. If you have smaller chicken breasts, use 3 or even 4. You'll use up most, if not all, of your stuffing. Now I want to put a lid on that, keep that simmering over medium-low, and I'm going to let that cook for about maybe 30 minutes. Then I'm going to turn the chicken breasts over so the sauce cooks into the other side. That'll add a little bit of coloring to my chicken. My timer just went off. And what I found with the chicken was after 30 minutes, when I went to turn it over, the internal temperature was already up to 155 degrees. So I turned it over and then cooked it for another 10 minutes. That should be enough. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my chicken out and transfer it to a plate lined with foil. And then I'm going to bring my heat back up under my sauce, but I want to set it at medium because I want to thicken my sauce. And I mentioned my stuffing. That was it. That was all I had left over. I'm going to work that into the sauce. It'll make for a nicely flavored sauce. And I want to thicken this sauce down. In the meantime now, I have to cover my chicken breast with foil, and I'm bringing water up to the boil to cook some penne pasta. My sauce now has been thickening. You can see how it leaves a bit of a trace there, the spoon. That's a nicely thickened sauce. Now I'm ready to season this with salt. You need to wait until it's concentrated before you put salt in it. Otherwise, you'll concentrate the salt. In the meantime, I did season those chicken breasts with salt. There was no point seasoning the outside with salt earlier because it all would have come off in the sauce, and I could have seasoned the inside of the chicken breasts, but the filling has salt in it. Now I want to taste this with my red handle tasting spoon. Fantastic. I love the flavor of that. All right, I'm ready to plate. I can't eat a whole chicken breast. Even a half of a chicken breast is a lot of food for me. I cut it at an angle to expose some of the beautiful stuffing. I sauced my pasta in the pan. Gonna put some of that on the side. If you wanted to, you could garnish that with some extra cheese. I actually like a garnish of a little bit of extra virgin olive oil. I think that tastes good on pasta. And then I want to put a little bit of my sauce on my chicken breast without covering up my filling, because I don't want to hide it. Next step is to see how good that tastes. There is my penne pasta with spinach stuffed chicken breast. I carved off a little piece of chicken breast for myself. Really tender. And that stuffing is so good. Get a piece of my pasta here. That is incredibly good. So excuse me, it's too late for lunch, too early for dinner, but I'm going to go enjoy my plate of spinach stuffed chicken breast. For a printable PDF copy of this recipe with step-by-step photographs, visit my website, mobilehomegourmet.com, and look on the home page or in the recipe archive.